A lot of members of Congress, as you know, and you all know a bunch of them, there's a small subset that are really have the expertise, the insights, really kind of help lead in this space. And this is one of the guys that we rely heavily upon that for his insight and expertise. So I'm glad that you get to hear some of them. So I'll turn it over to him. Thank you. You got it.
Hello. Good afternoon. It is great to be with you. Thanks for showing up and thanks for caring about the institution. 65 years ago, President Kennedy noted that in a democracy we all hold office, that we all have a position of responsibility. And the fact that you're here today caring about this institution is an indication of that. So thank you. I'm going to keep this reasonably brief, but just as background, I appreciate the kind words of the speaker. I chaired for 4 years the Select Committee on the Modernization of Congress, which, based on the name, makes it sound like we were the IT help desk. But we were tasked with the simple but challenging role of making Congress work better for the American people. And I'm conscious as a guy who served in this institution for the last 12 years that I'm part of an organization that, according to recent polling, is less popular than head lice, colonoscopies, and the rock band Nickelback. Apologies to any Nickelback fans in the room. But, to me, that perspective or perception by the American public just highlighted how important it is for us to constantly be working to improve the institution and to have it function better on behalf of the American people. I'll be candid, history has not been particularly kind to these modernization committees, select committees in general. More often than not, they don't get much accomplished. In fact, when Speaker Emerita Pelosi called and said, "Would you chair this committee?" my first reaction was, "What have I done to offend you?" Because more often than not, they don't do much of anything. But we were able to actually get some things done. One of the first things we did was to recognize that if you want things to work differently in Congress, you have to do things differently in Congress, and that's part of the rationale behind the hackathon. It's part of the reason we did a lot differently on our committee. Instead of hiring a Democratic staff and a Republican staff, we hired one staff, and some were Democrats and some were Republicans, but rather than putting on separate blue and red jerseys, we put on jerseys that said, "Hey, let's fix Congress." If you watch one of our hearings on C-SPAN, you have too much time on your hands. But if you do watch one of our hearings on C-SPAN, you'll note that we didn't sit with Democrats and Republicans on opposite sides of the dais. We said Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican. In fact, we didn't sit at a dais, we sat around the round table. Why? Well, I don't know about you, I've never had a good conversation speaking to the back of somebody's head. And so these were not cosmetic changes. We tried to engage one another in discussion and problem solving rather than simply debate and showmanship. And as a consequence, our committee passed over 200 recommendations focused on making the institution function better. And they range from a wide variety of things, everything from changes to the appropriations process, to attempts to foster civility and collaboration better, to bolstering the institution's ability to recruit and retain and have more diverse staff. In fact, one of our recommendations, recommendation 181, was that Congress should, quote, institutionalize and expand technology, education, and innovation initiatives, such as the Congressional Hackathon. So thank you for being part of the implementation of one of our recommendations. I will share we made a lot of recommendations focused specifically on technology, including one that said that the House should offer technology tools to facilitate member collaboration on legislation of mutual interest. We had a recommendation to push the House to evaluate and onboard industry-leading correspondence technology tools and platforms to enable offices to improve the quality and substance of how we communicate with our constituents. We made a recommendation that the House should review policies where appropriate and allow opportunities for Congress to use software and underlying code that's developed by outside civic technology organizations. There may be organizations in this room that applies to, and I'm glad you're here. We made a recommendation that the House should develop a platform for committees to solicit public comment and evidence on topics that might be coming before them. And finally, we had several recommendations related to the calendar with a specific focus on ensuring members can be in attendance at hearings and markups and have less conflicts. Last year at this hackathon, the idea of a centralized House calendar to help with this issue and these recommendations was born, and just recently, House Cal fully came to life and is now available house-wide. That came out of the hackathon. Just to give you a sense of what this means for individual members, if you can deconflict the committee calendar, you know, oftentimes you've got members who are in 3 or 4 committees at the same time. If you can use tech, you know, frankly, every high school and college in America has figured this out, and we're trying as an institution to figure this out. And so adopting those basic technologies really matter. So I share that with you, wanted to give you a sense of some of the 200 recommendations that we came up with, but I am particularly excited to see what you come up with. Maybe we'll think of ways to implement some of our outstanding recommendations, or even present your own ideas for further improving the institution. In fact, I'm so excited by the ideas I know you can create, and did it last year, is that I think Congress should be welcoming more ideas on a more regular basis, especially from bright young people across the country. So today, this is breaking news. I'm telling you today, breaking news at the hackathon. Are you ready? Yeah. We're about to introduce a resolution to establish a congressional modernization competition. The motion research shows that participation in civic life at an early age allows students to build interests and skill sets that will keep them engaged as citizens throughout their lives. And we've seen through the hackathon and through the Modernization Committee, ideas to modernize Congress can and should come from Americans of different ages, backgrounds, and walks of life. So a congressional modernization competition would allow the House to both encourage students' participation in civic life and provide Congress with additional recommendations to modernize and improve its work. So I share that with you. We're going to push to try to get that idea across the finish line. We're excited about your ideas and pushing those across the finish line, because we have a lot of challenges as an institution, and the fact that you're here as loving critics of the institution really matters. When we talk about some of the interesting areas of opportunity and threat, one of the big areas that the institution is grappling with is artificial intelligence. Thankfully, we've got great leadership in the House working in a bipartisan way to try to address some of those challenges and take advantage of some of those opportunities. And it is my pleasure to yield the stage to one of the key leaders, the chairman of the committee, who's navigating these issues, Jay Overland.